Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are joining us from, and whenever you're joining us. Thanks for making us a part of your week. For those of you who are new, welcome. My name is Jason Schuler. If you don't know me, I'm the membership director at the Idea Network. We've got a couple new faces joining us today, and I just want to say thank you guys for being here. Looking forward to a great talk and some good discussion today. We are in the dog days of summer here in North Carolina. I'm sure where you are as well. Hope ministry is going well wherever you're at. It's funny, some pastors slow down in the summer, some speed up. I'm pretty busy here, and with the network, we're always doing something, juggling a few things all over the place. So I'm glad you guys are here today, getting settled in. We want to open up in a word of prayer before we get started. Tim Wilcox. Tim, I see you there. If you don't mind just unmuting yourself here in just a moment, I want you to open us up in a word of prayer. Before Tim prays, one thing I want to make you aware of is the chat. Even if you're new and you're not here every week, or if you're an old timer and you've been here forever, if you could just put your name and your church and where you're from in the chat, that would help us to just kind of keep tabs on who's here, who's attending. And for those of you joining us for the first time, we are glad that you're here. Tim, I'm going to turn things over to you. If you don't mind just opening up our virtual roundtable today in a word of prayer, that'd be great.
Great. Let's pray. Dear Father, we come to you thanking you for the opportunity to gather together. Lord, I pray that this hour would be a time to be challenged, to be encouraged, and I pray that we would better make disciples because of our time together today. I pray for wisdom and insight, practical application. Pray that your Son would be glorified and we would just learn some things that could help us to see more people saved, baptized, and growing in their faith. And pray you'd strengthen families or whatever circumstances we're going through to bring you glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Hey, Kylie, if you're available to unmute and tell us a little bit about what's coming up with Idea Night, and then I'll introduce our speaker today.
Absolutely. So Idea Night is very, very quickly approaching. We are just about a month away. This Saturday, yes, this Saturday, we will be a month away officially. And of course, Corey Knopf is running that event as our engagement director. He's doing an awesome job. We've got some, each site has their own local speaker, which will really enable the local context of the event to just permeate the entire event, so that you guys are discussing what does your community need in this climate, in the social climate for the next coming year. And so your host is really able to dial in on exactly what your community needs, which is really a great aspect of Idea Night. And that's the whole point, is building community as well as encouragement within the ministry for your specific local context and what you guys are going through. So we're really excited about that. Of course, official members have free tickets. And any guests we have here today, well, of course, we encourage you to join and meet some of these members in person. So we're excited about that. And that's all I've got. Back to you, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks, Kylie. I appreciate that. I am pumped about today. I'm pumped about next week, and I'm really excited too about what we've got coming up in August. We have an all-star lineup for the month of August, and I want to share that a little bit later in today's virtual roundtable. I may save that for the end, but right now I want to introduce you to our speaker today. Jeremy Rands is the Vice President of Initiatives for the Idea Network. He's a friend to many of us. He's also the senior pastor of Monclova Baptist Church in Ohio. And Jeremy, I appreciate your friendship. Thanks for being with us today. I'm going to kick things over to you. Thanks again.
Hey, Jason, thank you. And thank you, Kylie, as well. I am looking forward to this session today. I'll start with this. This is probably going to be a pretty heavy just roundtable. And a heavy roundtable just because I want to walk you through just kind of where I've been the last couple months and we want these roundtables to be real, and we want our members to find great ideas for ministry and to find great ideas for, as even what we prayed today, seeing souls saved and people encouraged in ministry. But in order for us to do that, we have got to stay healthy ourselves. And we have got to make sure that we are being able to making the right decisions to be able to stay in ministry. And I think over this last year, I have been, it hit me probably 3 or 4 months ago, the amount of friends that I have had that are no longer in ministry. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was just continuing to pile up and pile up and pile up until I really didn't know what to do with it. And so I took the entire month of June off myself here, and went away to vacation with my family for a short period of time. Then I took a break and I went to a place called Marble Retreat in Marble, Colorado. And it's a pastor's retreat, fabulous, incredible place. I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to take too much of my time with that. But you're alone, and they give you a counselor for an hour and a half in the morning and then an hour and a half in the afternoon. And really, when I went there, I thought to myself, I don't really need a counselor. I just need to rest. I just need a break. And probably 2 or 3 days into this thing, I found myself just a mess, like unloading everything to this counselor that I've never even met before. It was a lady counselor, and she was incredible. And we talked a lot about just burnout, and we talked a lot about just being an overachiever. And so I have a lot of things written down here, and I don't have a whole lot of time to say everything that I really want to say. So just hang on and let me go over these notes, and then however we decide to do the breakout sessions, if we're all together, maybe we can say more. But if we break out, I'd love to hear from you guys, because one of the things I'm hearing, as well as many of my ministry friends no longer in ministry, are the ones that I'm dealing with. They're just tired. I think COVID caused us to think in ways that just drained us, the pressures, and it never stopped. We just have kept running and running and running. And a lot of times it's just to the next event within our church. So I want to first talk to us about the trauma of overachievement, because we live in a society that values success the most. And guys, sometimes I feel like if we're not careful, we want to be a part of roundtables like this as well, because we want to experience success. We want that next great idea, that next thing that's going to make us successful as a pastor. And we value success, if not in all things. We just value success more than anything else. And success can be wonderful when it comes from a place of authenticity and purpose and alignment. However, success doesn't always equal happiness or fulfillment, especially when we chase success blindly with no sense of purpose, and we use that success as a measure of our own self-value and worth. And pastors, we're horrible at this. The success in ministry often does, we measure that based upon our value as a pastor or our value as a ministry leader. And many of us subconsciously chase success out of an unrelenting need to be perfect, to gain external validation that we never got maybe as a child, and to prove ourselves worthy of love. I read this quote, the overachiever feels seen, heard, and valued through success and achievement, and uses external validation as a way to cope with low self-worth, believes that the only way to receive love is through achievement. As overachievers, we often use our careers or the pastorate or ministry that we're leading as a way to distract ourselves from unhealed wounds and keep ourselves busy enough to avoid any real type of intimacy. And the longer we pastor, sometimes the caution I want to give many of us is the less intimate we are in relationships with our wife and relationships with our children, because we're so driven by success in ministry. Many of us had childhoods that didn't allow us to express our true selves. For those who were abandoned in some way as a child, or through abuse or neglect, or maybe many of us had parents who pushed their certain way on us, and we weren't allowed to be heard or seen. And as a result, we abandon our true selves and our true wants, and we learn to survive by ignoring our authenticity, and we rely on these responses, these survival responses, which is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I see that so often as I deal with pastors. I don't mean this in a negative way at all, but many of us are so insecure, and we're doing everything we can to hide our insecurities from the people that we're trying to lead. And perfectionism and drivenness are actually flight responses. It's a survival instinct for emotional abandonment, and maybe it's abandonment for as a child. As I said, we just couldn't be seen. We were never heard. Let me skip a little bit here just for sake of time. When developed healthy, the flight responses ensure good boundaries, assertiveness, and healthy self-protection when necessary. And when constantly relied on as a need for survival or attempt to cope with unhealed wounds, our survival instincts impairs our ability to relax in an undefended state. And I want you, I guess a great question, Jason, is what do we do to relax in an undefended state? What do you do to relax? I mean, truly relax, where you can turn everything off, you can be yourself, and you're not having to defend this persona of perfectionism or overachieving that we rely on so that people accept us and look up to us. And it also dulls our awareness of our past trauma, and it distracts us from our feelings of misalignment. And this leads to being a workaholic. Probably many of us are guilty of that. This leads to the person who is always on, can never turn anything off. The type A personality who rushes to achieve. You have to be the first to get to something. It leads us to being the perfectionist, and it leads us to be this overachiever. And this leads to constant doing. And this is where I found myself at, to a place of just constant doing and worrying or planning when we're not doing. I would take a break and feel guilty because I'm not thinking about what I need to be doing. And so my mind would never shut off. I found myself at this place. This leads to burying ourselves in work to avoid authenticity and to be vulnerable. This leads to anxiety, it leads to panic, it leads to burnout. And in more extreme cases, it leads to addictions, depression, and sometimes for some ministry leaders, it even leads to suicide. And we've seen all of these. We've seen all of these take place. And so I knew it was coming. I had no idea what it was because I never experienced it before. And but probably April or May, I really felt this coming on. And then I had my wife come to me, our chairman of our deacon board came to me, and I had two of my staff members came to me and said, something's not right. What's going on? And then I read an article, I think it was Carrie Newhoff that put it out, the 11 signs of burnout. And I had like all 11 of them. I think I even added one, and I had 12. And I realized something's majorly wrong. And so I wanted to research, what is burnout? Burnout is a state of mental and physical exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. Kylie, I think you put it on the Facebook post about burnout. And I really enjoyed her post because she was looking for answers. But the answer to burnout is not just get into your Bible more. Because I was walking with God the entire time. I was studying. I heard God's voice. My issue with burnout was not that I wasn't hearing God's voice. I was. My issue was I was just excessively stressed, and it was just continuing. It just felt almost like um, um, just continuing a wave. And once a wave would hit, another one would hit, and another one would hit. And then you just get to the place where you're surfing waves, but you're really drowning because you're just taking on so much water. And there's 3 stages of burnout. Burnout is, number 1, you're stressed. Number 2, you get overwhelmed. And then number 3, you get crispy. And while the process can be stopped at any of these points, it's generally the crispy stage that people begin to have a sense that something is definitely wrong. Something is wrong. And so the first stage of stress, and I'm really rushing through here. Jason, how am I doing on time? Am I okay? Okay. The first stage is stress. And I hope today that you guys will identify if you're even close to this. And number 1, I want you to tell you is there is help and there is support, and you're not alone. And if you are a ministry leader and you are feeling a sense of being overwhelmed and burnout, there's hope. There's true hope. But the stage 1 of stress is it's characterized by anxiety. I talk to a lot of pastors, and I experience this even myself. I wake up in the middle of the night or in the morning, and I'm stressed out about a day, and I haven't even started my day yet. I'm anxious about something, and I couldn't even put my finger on what I was anxious about. And sometimes it was just the overwhelming workload. And it wasn't one specific thing. It was just this anxious feeling. Then it leads to being irritable, worry, high blood pressure, grinding your teeth in your sleep, not being able to sleep, increased illness, loss of appetite, or stress eating. And I found myself, I would go to the refrigerator, I'd open the refrigerator door, and my wife would say, "What are you doing? We just ate." And I said, I know. And I wasn't even hungry, but that was the way that I would deal with this first level of stress. Unusual heart rhythms. You could just feel it in your chest that something isn't right. You struggle to concentrate. You become so forgetful. And you deal with constant headaches. Number 2, the overwhelmed stage. It's characterized, now you get to a place of you're decreasing in performance. You know how much work you have to do, but you're not able to mentally stay with it. And that brings yourself to this place of overwhelm because things just continue to pile up. You get to the place where you become negative in your thoughts about yourself and your abilities. You begin to withdraw from people, friends, healthy relationships. You begin to withdraw from. And some even attempt to medicate in unhealthy ways. Lateness at work, you find yourself, you're the last one to always leave. And when you do leave, you feel like there's so much work left for you that you shouldn't be leaving. And you're guilty when you've worked late because you still haven't worked enough. At the same time, you can also procrastinate. You know there's things you have to do, but you just can't find yourself to get these things done. Marital conflict. I'm alarmed, guys. I'm alarmed at the amount of marital conflict that many pastors have in their marriages. It's alarming. And we have to identify it if it's there. Decreased sexual desires, persistent tiredness in the mornings, missing project deadlines, social withdrawal, resentfulness, increased caffeine consumption just so that you can get through the day, and some even lead to alcohol or other addictions, unhealthy, unbiblical addictions to get them through. And then you get to the place of apathy. Then stage 3 is this crispy stage that is a dangerous stage to be. And this is where most of us get to before we even realize we need help. And that's characterized by depression, chronic symptoms, sadness, stomach or bowel problems, mental fatigue, physical fatigue, headaches, hopeless discouragement, the desire to check out or run away from friends or work or family. This is when you begin to question your calling in ministry. Should I even be a pastor? Should I be a ministry leader? Is this even what I can spend my life doing? And some even get to the place at this crispy stage where they begin to say, if there was something else I could do besides pastoring, I'd be doing it. And then the occasional thought about ending our life. And then the leading causes of burnout is number one, it's bad theology. It's misplaced priorities, identity, value, and worth. The leading cause of burnout is unrealistic expectations. Now, again, so many people think this burnout is just simply, you're not in the Bible enough. You're not walking with God. Your prayer life needs to get better. No, it's misplaced priorities, identity, value, and worth. It's unrealistic expectations. It's poor work and personal boundaries. You've not set proper healthy boundaries, and you're doing everything outside of the boundaries that you should have for yourself. And then last is inadequate self-care. Inadequate self-care. We get to a place where we think if we truly care for ourselves, then we then have to ignore someone else, and everybody else in ministry is more important than us. And if you're not careful, you can make your children think that everybody else in ministry is more important than them as well. And this is what leads to burnout. In many cases, bad theology is in part responsible for high levels of burnout and attrition in the ministry. Sometimes along the line, we get this message that serving wholeheartedly means neglecting the needs God has created our bodies with, as well as command to regularly practice Sabbath rest. And don't miss that bad theology is, I'm going to work. In order for me to give my whole heart, that means that I have to not care for myself. In wholeheartedly giving ourselves to the ministry is not an absence of caring for your body that God has given to you. And practicing a sabbatical or Sabbath, a day of rest, where all we're doing is resting emotionally and physically our bodies. If we're not careful, we can get caught up in a works-based mindset where we think that we earn approval from God by sacrificing our bodies and oftentimes our families on the altar of ministry. And let that sink in. This theology leads us to never say no to anything. Give 100% of your energy to the ministry, even if that means stealing from our families to do so. Because we come to this place, it's up to us to save the world. And that mindset is unsustainable. And that mindset is bad theology. And that mindset is never what God intended for you and I to have. And while we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, God does not empower us to do what he is not calling us to do. And that's why you can't leap from a tall building and sprout wings and fly, because God's never called you to do that. You can want to do that all day long, but you can't if God has not equipped you and called you to do that. Jesus, I learned this past June. This was so good for me. Jesus told many people no, and was a big disappointment to even his closest friends. God is not calling you to do everything. You get no extra credit for doing what he hasn't asked you to do. Let that sink into your thoughts. You get no extra credit with God by doing what he hasn't called you to do. He's not impressed. In fact, if you misappropriate time and energy to things that you aren't called by God to do, that aren't God's priority for you, no matter how good they are, it's a failure in stewardship. And it leads to burnout. Sometimes the most godly thing to do in a situation is to say no to a great ministry opportunity, dealing with a family, to doing something within your church, in order to use that time for self-care. And here's some scripture, because I want to back that up with scripture. Jesus, you can see him caring for himself in Mark 1:35, in Luke 5:16, and then Matthew 14:23 and 22 and 23. And Jason, I've got like 10 more pages of notes and my time is way over gone. So I'm sorry. I'm leaving it at a really, really bad place, I know, but my time's gone.
Jeremy, thanks for that talk. Here's what I'd like to do. I wrote a few questions while Jeremy was talking, and I just threw them into the chat. And what I think we want to do today is just stay together in this one room instead of breaking out, and just have some discussion. Because Jeremy, I personally like where you left it, because you've unpacked a lot that now you're leaving us with a little bit of the responsibility to weigh in on kind of what you've been through, what many of us are going through. So let me recap these questions that I just threw in the chat, and we can start tackling these one by one. Question number one: tell about a time when you viewed success as a measurement of your own self-value or self-worth. I thought that was a powerful statement you made in the beginning, that all of us do. The question you actually asked in the session, Jeremy: what do you do to relax in a non-defensive state? I think that's a powerful thing to meditate on. Number three: in what ways have you felt burnout symptoms the most recently? You listed those 11 or 12 that I think from the Newhoff article that you read, but those were resonating. I was watching, and during that session, I don't know if you guys had the gallery view on, but guys were just nodding in affirmation, like, yep, check, been there, felt that. But what ways have you felt burnout symptoms the most here recently? And then number four: describe an unrealistic expectation that you feel currently. That could be something that you've placed on yourself, or something that maybe somebody else has placed on you. So I want to start with number one. And for those of you that are new, the way that we do these roundtable discussions is we usually break out into rooms. We're just going to do one big room here today with all of us. And if anyone's got something to say, you can unmute yourself and answer one of these questions, or you can go the traditional route and, slip your hand up or whatever, raise your hand on the screen. But yeah, we want to hear from you guys and just kind of weigh in on Jeremy's topic today. Anyone want to start us off? Don't feel the need to all jump in at once. It's always awkward when everyone starts talking at the same time, because they all want to go and they're very eager. Who wants to start us off today?
Hey, Jason.
Go ahead, Nick, and then Philip, I'm going to come to you next.
Yeah, and my screen's frozen, so I can hear you. Sorry for cutting you off like that. Just having internet issues. I think one of the things that I think back on measurement of my own self-value was early into planting our church, and really it was pressure put on me. And I don't think it was intentional, but another local pastor, which is probably one of the most successful churches in our area, we ran into each other, and he made the comment, just kind of checking how we're doing, and we're on friendly terms, so I've never felt like competition from him or anything like that. But just asking kind of where we were at and things. And when I told him kind of where we were number wise and kind of, as a church, he made the comment about, oh, well, I would have thought by now y'all were already at X number of people. And just that statement really kind of made me feel like, wow, am I not doing something right? Should we be further than what we are? And really it kind of made me view whether or not we had success or lack of success as maybe I'm doing something wrong. I'm not doing something right. What are we missing? And so really just that comment, something just stuck with me for the longest time, that it really just did a number on me, making me feel like, I wasn't measuring up to something that I should be. So that's just an example that I think back on for myself.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you sharing that. Philip Jones, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, I think that probably for a lot of us, it's not necessarily a one-time thing or whatever. It's a culture that's been developed through our churches and our connections, our circles over time, especially when there, books being written and conferences about how to take it to the next level. And, you got to have somebody down the aisle every single week and all these kind of things. And, I understand the importance of being out there and reaching out to people and all, but you've got to, as Jeremy's talking about, you've got to have time to rest. You've got to have time with family. You've got to do all that God has called us to. And the entirety of his calling is not summed up in being pastor or ministry leader. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a friend. I've got many roles that I play. And if I focus all of my energies on being the best ever at the one thing, everything else is going to fall apart. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just my thoughts on that.
Yeah, totally. I think it was Carrie Newhoff, also Jeremy, that said something along the lines of busyness is not a sign that you're more spiritual. Busyness is a sign that you don't have your life together. And I thought that was so good because, yeah, Philip, a lot of what you said, like I grew up in that mentality too, where, the most successful people were the busiest people and they had the most invitations and they had the most going on. And now in the social media realm, I mean, it's so much more than that. It's just been exponentially pressurized in our society. But great thoughts, Nick and Philip. Anyone else want to weigh in here?
Yes, I appreciate Jeremy's candor and transparency. I'm a twin, and my whole life I've been compared to my twin brother. And so there's an old phrase: comparison is the thief of joy. And oftentimes, one thing that makes us have this mentality is we're comparing ourselves with somebody else, and they are moving up, and we're not, and we're creating a lack of joy for ourselves just by staying in a comparison mentality instead of collaborating and connecting with other churches and sharing their joys. Our comparison can cause this to happen. I used to go to, and I'm a church planner now, but I used to be a youth pastor, and I work with my brother. We go to preachers' meetings, and he's the senior pastor, and I'm the youth pastor. And they'd talk to him, and then, oh, you're a youth pastor? Oh, and it was like they would look past me like I didn't exist. That bothered me, like my worth and my self-value. The devil started to like speak a little bit of things like, like I'm not a real preacher, but that was something that bothered me, that I had to combat a little bit, that these little things that had nothing to do with our self-value and our self-worth. I'll just make a quick word about the new social media pushes and trends that we have. We're putting our sermons, and we're putting TikToks up, and then we're going back and looking how many people are watching. And don't fall into that trap, because the world's not going to love what God puts out as much as they love their own stuff. And we will attach our self-worth to that and think, oh, I must not have did it right or whatever. Be careful of that. I fell into that trap a little bit. It's not about how many views we get if we do it to the glory of God.
That's good, David. Great thought. I appreciate you contributing that. And what you said about complimenting as opposed to comparing, I think that is so true. What else? Who else wants to jump in here?
My name is Michael Jones, and my wife and I came from a place of heavy burnout several years back. I guess it was about 6 years ago. We came out of church, and it was a situation that I'd been the youth pastor there for almost 6 years, and I knew God wanted me to go somewhere else, but it's hard to leave family. So it was my sister and brother-in-law's church, the pastor there. And I was part-time, but I worked full-time hours there. I worked at a warehouse down the road from that church, and then I'd go to the church after being at work all day, and make it home in the evening and night. Then Saturday, it was all day there because the expectation was, we have events on Saturdays, we have activities on Saturdays, you're here on Saturdays. And then Sundays, we were all day in the church. And then Monday back to work, and then back in the church, and so forth. And it was very much an expectancy of the more you do, the more successful you are, and the more the pastor's going to be happy with you. And it was go, go, go. I would do stuff. I'd say, hey, I'm not going to be here this coming Saturday. I'm going to take my family somewhere. And he'd come out straight up and say, well, I don't think that's what God would want of you. It's just like, oh man. And so the guilt trips were there constantly for almost 6 years. And so when we came out of that, when we finally left, we went to my parents' home church. They're missionaries. And we went to my parents' home church that was in the same town, and it was the church my wife grew up in. And I talked with the pastor there, and I said, hey, we're coming out of this situation, and I said, I want to get in and start serving again in the church. And so after talking, he goes, yeah, I just want you to sit and do nothing for 3 months. And that was, as far as that was an identity crisis set of 3 months for us. And actually it was the whole year after that. It was the worst year, but it was the most healing year that I've probably ever had. And it was, that pastor's preaching, that pastor's counseling was spot on every time. There wasn't a service that we went in that we were in that something didn't speak to us about our situation and about our identity and about being loved regardless of how well you perform. It was amazing. We grew a lot spiritually, and we grew a lot together because like Jeremy had mentioned, being away from home and sacrificing your days off, loading all that stress. You try to be patient with everybody else, and you come home and you just unload on family. Everything stresses you out. I've got 5 kids, and so it's just like all the noise and everything like that. I just to everybody, and so definitely marital stress, definitely strain there in the family because of burnout, and it's something that that was 6 years ago that all that happened, and so I'm still learning from it. My wife we're still healing from things. Every once in a while, you think, man, I'm glad we're finally over that, and then little things pop up, and I'm like, man, I still got to work on stuff like that. But it's been really good because God redeemed.
Michael, we may have lost your audio.
To counsel with other people, but yeah, definitely those unrealistic expectations when we take what others expect from us over what God expects from us, and which is just intimacy with Him, fellowship and a walk with Him, and going where He leads us and doing what He leads us to do, regardless of what other people expect us to do. It can lead to some.
Hey, Jason, sometimes unrealistic expectations aren't what others put on us. Many a times in leaders, it's what we put on ourselves.
Yeah.
And we do like to place it on someone else. Like, I'm only doing this because my church people want me to or expect me to. But really, we're doing it because we're just driven, and we don't know when to say no. So for some, the answer to how much should I give, it's always more. You always feel like I'm not giving enough to this. I always have to give more. So we use this, and all of us are probably guilty of this. Have you ever said, I'm giving this 110% of my time? Yeah. I'm giving 110% to this. Well, first of all, that's impossible. And the truth is, we can't give 100% to anything, because God's not asking us to give 100% of our time, energy, or attention to any one thing. If he did, we would be neglecting the many other things that are important to God. And it's just in our mind, we have to give 110%. How many things can you give 110% to? You
Yeah.
can't give anything. If you have more than one thing to do, you can't give all of it 100%. You don't have the time or energy to do it. So it's impossible, right? So the question isn't, what is your very best? The real question is, how much time, energy, and effort would the Lord have me to give to this? The question is, what is good enough? If it's good enough for the King, if it's good enough for the Lord, then it's good enough. And if it's not, I have this written down, if it is your King's expectations that matter, so long as he is pleased with your stewardship of time and energy that needs to be good enough for you, it is him alone that you will give account to for your life. This means you must daily be talking with the King about his priorities for your life. And if you feel like the King is an unrelenting taskmaster, there's a real good chance that has more to do with the wounds from some other experience in your life, but it didn't come from Jesus. He's not making you feel that way. And so unrealistic expectations are what we put on ourselves so often. And it's not God. It's definitely not God.
Yeah, I think it's a very popular thing to preach that we have an audience of one, and we like to think that, but to be honest, we don't really believe that a lot of the time. We believe we're trying to please the people in the seats, the people in the pews, and I think, yeah, we place a lot of unnecessary expectations on ourselves, and we can blame people, like you said, we can assign it to this person expects this, but really a lot of times it's what we expect from ourselves. I want to get to question 2. What do you do to relax in a non-defensive state? That was one of the questions Jeremy asked in his talk. If anybody wants to jump in here and just say, hey, this is something that's been helpful to me to try and avoid some burnout in my life, with my family, with my ministry, any ideas that you guys have along those lines?
I can jump in here. We take Friday as our family day. And so Friday is, unless it's a weird event like Good Friday that comes up. Friday is our family day. We just kind of spend that together. Saturday is a really relaxed day for us as well. I do a few last minute things to get ready for Sunday that I need to, but that's pretty relaxed. We take regular vacations. I have 4 weeks a year. And sometimes it's just going down to the beach. You know, the beach for me is like 10 minutes away, and that's my place to just get away. But my wife and I have made a lot of changes in our lives so that we can have longevity in ministry. And so, Jeremy, I was gonna ask you, so you can maybe kind of help us with this as well. What are some changes that you have made coming back, or changes you are planning to make, just to kind of help us and even help maybe hold you accountable to be restoring and refreshing yourself as well?
I'm working through that right now. I started with just restructuring our staff team. Time away, scheduling some time away. I'm already going to plan on taking next June off and strategically plan it. I feel like it hit me this year, and so the Lord allowed things to fall into place, but I want to be strategic with that next year. And just really looking at my schedule and saying, all right, Lord, what do I need to be doing? Even with my own staff, I said to them, I can't be answering the questions that you need to answer. It's just too much. I need you to be able to answer these questions and only bring to me the things that you simply can't answer. And then so delegating some things out as well. Then getting back to time with my wife. I really, and we have a healthy marriage. Like I thought we did, until I realized it wasn't as healthy as I thought. And one of the things that my wife said to me is, when we're together, can you please put this down? And she's always said that to me. I knew she was annoyed by it, but I didn't realize how much that was really impacting our marriage, to the place where she said to me, by you being constantly available on your phone all the time, you're showing me that I'm second best. And we had a really, really serious discussion about that within the last 30 days or so. And so I don't look at my phone. I leave it in the car. I come home, and so I'm not available to people, because I'm only going to be available to my wife at that time. And in that short amount of time, just the last few weeks of doing that, it has made such a difference in my marriage. Something so small, but what I'm doing is I'm putting my wife first, and I'm not just doing it with lip service. I'm actually doing it, and she feels like she's first in my life now when I'm with her. And then she allows me to do ministry. It's not like she has to be number one all the time. It's just, when you're with me, let me be number one. And when you're doing ministry, let that be number one. And so it's not a competition between the two. It's a respect for my wife, for my kids.
That's great. That's a great takeaway. Good question, Thomas. Good answer. Anyone else? What do you do to relax in a non-defensive state? If not, we can move on to 3.
I got a quick one. It might sound silly, but it doesn't involve going on vacation. Those are really important ones. If you have an instrument that you play, I have a piano, and I'll just go and play my piano. It's therapy. You can worship. When David would play for Saul, Saul would be renewed. Just pull up something on YouTube where somebody's worshiping spontaneously and play along with them. Whatever instrument you play, or if you sing, I'll just do that, and that relaxes me and spiritually rejuvenates me more than almost anything else. And my wife plays too, so we share that in common. That's something that helped for me. Just any single day of the world, I can do that.
Good feedback.
One of the things that I do, I'm Sydney Ford from Rome, Georgia. And I wanted to share with you one of the things that my wife and I do together. Every day we spend 1 hour in a separate room, and she'll spend time with the Lord and I'll spend time with the Lord. Then we'll meet together after that 1 hour and just share the rest of the evening or night together. And that have helped me so very much. There's times when I have meetings, I have people to meet and all of this. She said, go do it. But when our hour comes, we spend time with each other, and then we spend time just by ourselves, just thinking and meditating on God and the Word of God. And I'm going to tell you, it gives you energy. It makes you feel better. And at night, we'll meet up around 9:00 p.m. every night, and together, and we share to about 10 or 11 o'clock, just she and I, and we just have the best time ever. And we cut everybody off, the world, everybody. So, but we are so excited to share that that moment with each other. And then we have our family time a lot of times in the afternoon. So it's very important to spend time with family.
Sure. Thank you, Sydney. That's great. Thanks for weighing in on that. Tim, was there something you were going to jump in with?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I like to follow what Jesus said in Matthew, to behold the fowl. That's one of my favorites. Spending some time out in the backyard, sort of my happy place, just watching the birds. I like to work in the yard. It's one of my few hobbies, and kind of get it looking nice, and then stop and look around, consider the lilies, and look at the birds is sort of my happy spot.
That's great. Any others before we move on? All right. With number 3, what ways have you felt burnout the most recently? Any of those symptoms that Jeremy read? I'm not going to ask him to read those 11 or 12 symptoms again, but were there any of those that, as you heard that, you thought, That one sticks out more than another. Any of those on that list that stick out pretty significantly to you, maybe from someone we haven't heard from yet today? Nope, we've got them all. We've got them all under wraps. They're all good. We're good with those. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, since no one else has answered, I wasn't going to weigh in because to be honest, I feel like I'm kind of in the middle of a lot of this. And when you say the most recent, probably the most recent was about 2 hours ago. I find myself being very short with people. And that's not characteristic of me. And so that's when I start to realize that, I really ought to treat people better. When a lady's trying to tell me an event that happened yesterday, and she's talking about all the different types of pies that they had there. And I'm like, I've got other things I can do. I don't need to know every single type of pie that you had there at the thing. And I catch myself trying to be somewhere else than where I am. And I was always taught, man, be where you are. And I try to remember that. And I find those things to be uncharacteristic of me. Now, some of us we're just rude. So if that's characteristic of you, that may not be a sign of burnout. But for me, I try to be patient with people. And I find myself not being, I would be similar when you guys were talking about number one, similar to Jeremy, of it really isn't the church that is putting a lot of these unrealistic expectations. You always have those select few, and I'd encourage you not to focus on that small 5-10%. You've got a good 80-90% possibly of people that are behind you that desire to see you successful, but it is a self-imposed expectation. And when you have that self-imposed expectation, it absolutely is tied to your self-value. And so this is something that's definitely helpful to me. Jeremy, I appreciate you talking about this today.
Yeah, that's good, Andrew. Were there any pies that were just glaringly missing from the mix? I'm just kidding. Hey, I want to get a couple things here. One of the things you just said, Andrew, Thomas put in a book, Be Where Your Feet Are by Scott O'Neill. He recommended that. And then Kylie also put a link to the Carrie Newhoff site in the chat, 11 signs you're more than just tired, you're burning out. And so I wanted to refer you guys to that link in that book. Jeremy's got some resources he's going to share with us. If they don't go in the chat, or we'll send them out this week. We'll post those on the Facebook page, any resources he's got. Anyone else want to jump in with any of these questions? Just kind of have a last word. We've got a couple minutes here before we wrap up. Anyone else have something they want to contribute? Yeah, I see that hand. I see that hand. Kylie, go ahead, and then Jonathan will come to you.
One thing that I think can be extremely powerful in times of anxiety, burnout, all of this, is actually being honest with someone and saying the words, I am feeling this way, and be legitimately honest with the depth of what you're feeling, no matter how deep it might go. Because I think being honest and saying it to someone, it makes it more real, and then we have to address it. And there's a reason why anxiety and depression usually come with reclusivity. And we pull back and we become a hermit and go into ourselves, because it's hard to deal with. It's hard to address that ball. We'd like to take that little ball and just stick it away and just ignore it because it's hard. But finding at least one person that we can just say, hey, I need you to hear me and not freak out when I tell you how I'm actually feeling. And if we can find that one person, I think it gives us so much hope in that moment to pray, reevaluate, step back from the situation and address it. Because the more we push it down, I believe it's Caroline Leaf. She gives the example of a volleyball, and you push a volleyball down into a pool. Well, what's going to happen? It might, depending on the depth of the pool, it might take a little while, but eventually it's going to pop right back up. because that thing is full of air and it's not going to sink to the bottom. And we can't just push our emotions down and expect them to stay buried. They're going to pop back up. And depending on how big the ball is, it's going to pop up even faster. And it's not until we address it and deflate the situation through talking with someone, through praying about it, through working through it, that it will deflate and we can put that to rest. So I think talking with someone and even just saying the words out loud to someone is the first step that can really, really help us take that step to getting back where we need to be.
For sure. Solid. Every senior pastor just wrote that illustration down, and we'll use it in the next 3 weeks, guaranteed. Very good. Jonathan, I want to go to you and then we'll wrap up today.
Yeah. So yesterday I was just having a conversation about how occasionally I'll put this self-imposed pressure on myself, and it's like we're talking to the secretary at the church, and I was like, I feel like I can do 100 things right, but it's the one thing that I do wrong that gets noticed that makes me kind of doubt myself. And so I think just hearing a lot of these things today, and again, I appreciate Tim and Garrett inviting me on today, because it's self-doubt is something I deal with a ton. And the reality is that the 100 things I do right, if they're for the glory of God, that's the best part about what we get to do in the ministry. And so if there is one thing that slips through the cracks, Jesus is there to forgive us for that too. So being reminded of that today by hearing some of y'all's testimonies as well through this topic has been really enlightening. So thank you guys.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, I want to let you guys know what's coming up, not just next week, although I will share with you next week. I want to share with you what we've got coming up in August. August has 5 Tuesdays. Next week, Dennis Fountain will be with us, our very own Dennis Fountain. His topic is not just workers, but developing staff and volunteers who enjoy serving. Kylie, are you able to put that graphic up for August, the 5 guys that we've got coming in August? I'm really excited about this. 5 Tuesdays in August. August 2nd, we've got Josh Tice, who's going to be with us. August 9th, Kurt Skelly. He's been with us many times. August 16th, Dr. Gary Chapman, who is the author of The 5 Love Languages, among many other bestsellers. He's going to be with us August 16th. Tom Rayner, a good friend of the network with Church Answers. He's going to be with us on the 23rd. And then we're going to wrap August with Mark Miller. Maybe you don't know Mark Miller. He is let me read his title here. He is the Vice President of High Performance Leadership with Chick-fil-A. He's been with them since 1977. He's a very sought after speaker. He and Dr. Chapman, we've never had with us before on the network. And so we're excited to have both of them. But that's our August lineup. Those of you that are official members, make sure that you're there for every week in the month of August. I'm excited about that. If you're interested in more information, how to become an official member of the Idea Network, go to our website, check that out, reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Special thanks to Jeremy Rands today for leading our talk. Really good talk, really good discussion. And that's what we have a network for, is for things like this, to discuss with one another. If you don't have someone you can talk to, reach out to me, reach out to Jeremy. Thomas put his information up. Any of us that are in the network, we would love to be a help to you. That's why we do this, because ministry is done so much better together than alone and in isolation. So Jeremy, thanks for that researched topic today and going through that with us and walking through it. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. And we hope you guys have a great week thinking outside the box. Take care, guys. Have a great week. Bye-bye.